So, welcome back to You Tuned In. Thank you for tuning back in. Last week we talked about anxiousness and kind of identifying it, but we really only explored it from the perspective of relationships and people and how we interact with the world around us. But I think anybody that has experienced any sort of emotional distress or anxiousness knows that it can be triggered by all kinds of things, and it has many different faces. And the topic that I feel like talking about today is going to probably be a bit triggering, just because we all find ourselves being guilty of this in a way. And really the topic and the theme of this episode is where are you going? Imagine you're running through a crowded location, just people everywhere. And you're just running through them, you're bumping into people and all kinds of things, and eventually somebody stops you and says, "Hey, what's going on? What are you running from? Where are you going?" And you simply respond with some stupid idiom like, "Man, I'm just out here trying to make it. I'm just out here hustling, trying to get it." You would look crazy. But that, in essence, is what we have trained ourselves to do. In today's world, we hustle and we drive our feet and we churn and we churn and we churn. But for what? And regardless of your job function, your career path, whatever it is that you're doing, this particular conversation is only effectual if you internalize it to the point of discomfort, to where you can start asking great questions and giving real answers. This isn't about anybody else. This isn't about, when you hear this conversation, it's not about your friend or your person that you know that's struggling in these areas. This is like a really internal conversation of saying, where are you in specific going? Why are you churning your feet that hard? And what are you trying to make happen? Where does it end? There's this book. Simon Sinek writes this book, and it's called Start With Why. And I love that book. It's one of my favorites, and I recommend it to all kinds of people when I'm talking to them. But in this book, he identifies that there are these how types and there are why types. And essentially a how type is somebody who's very interested in like efficiency, tactical efforts to like get things completed. But a why type is someone who's very much a visionary. They're interested in the destination, the end goal. But he mentions that these why types without a how type is just this beautiful destination, but with no way to get there, right? Like you have this beautiful destination, but you lack the tactical ability to get from point A to point B. But a how type without a why type is just these immaculate, beautiful roads, but they go nowhere. Roads to nowhere. And that essentially is how I'm feeling right now. And what I think contributes to a level of anxiousness is that we've busied ourselves. I truly feel like that the American work week is a tool that the devil has used to keep you in the ever existing state of go. You see, I'll keep quoting these books. There's a book by Sun Tzu, The Art of War. You've probably heard of it, but one of the things he talks about in there is his favorite enemy to fight is one who does not know they're fighting. Right? Like if I were the devil and I knew that I could not get you to just outright practice idolatry. I could not get you to worship something or lift something up higher than you would the God that you very much believe in and that you very much desire to have a part of your life. If I knew I couldn't say to you, go worship that thing, what I would try to do is I would try to create a way for you to be wrapped up in worship and not know it because you think it's noble, because you think it's healthy, and because you think it's good. You got 2 jobs. You're working 60 hours a week because you got this goal or this dream or this passion, and then when you're done working, you go and you chase the goal, dream, and the passion, and then you teach your children that when you really want something, you got to work hard, you got to go get it, and all these different things that we say, and none of them inherently in and of themselves are bad things. Knowing how to work is a great thing. The scripture says if a man doesn't work, neither should he eat. Like, these are all really good things, isolated and kept in moderation with God. But I think anybody anybody who with eyes can tell right now that that's not the situation we are in as people. Where are you going? And I'm not don't get what I'm saying confused with passion. I'm not talking about, when I say where you going, it's probably tempting for you to tell me your passion. I've always wanted to be a musician. That's my passion. So whenever I'm working or whatever I'm creating, I'm saying, okay, I want to get to this spot. All these things that sound really noble, those are passions. I'm not asking what's your passion. I'm saying where you're going. Go deeper. What's the destination? Where does it end for you? And the reason this question is important is so that you know when to pull the plug. If you have a passion, a career function, a drive, whatever it may be, and you don't have a destination or a place that you know that you're getting off the highway, then you, my friend, are a slave. You don't know it yet, but that's what you are. Because you'll never know when you arrived. And again, I'm preaching to the choir. Like this, all these things come to me. I have the hardest time stopping and smelling the roses. And if you go through and read through the scripture, over and over and over again, God is clear that he does want you to have the ability to sit in the place that you're at. The scripture talks about that some people suppose that gain is godliness. But true godliness with contentment is great gain. I think about Solomon. And when all of his learning, he asked God, he wants to be wise. And God says, I'll make you wiser than anybody else was or will be. And then in Ecclesiastes, you can see he goes and he applies himself to wisdom. But as he's doing that, he ends up landing at this spot. He's like, man, of the making of many books, there's no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Here's the whole duty of man. Fear God and keep his commandments. But just before he says that, he says, enjoy the wife of your youth and the labor. That's the fruit that God gave you. It's just like, wow. The wisest man in the world is saying, okay, let me simplify. Enjoy God's creation. Enjoy the wife of your youth and the love that I've given you on this side of heaven. Fear me. Keep my commandments. And relax. But we do the opposite of that. I mean, we are on a hamster wheel. We're on this true hamster wheel between social media, between calendars, works, and the fact that we now can do everything virtually. The devil is just so cunning. I don't even have to be in your presence to get my job done. I can pull up my laptop and I can say, let's schedule a virtual meeting so that literally every drop of my time can be taken. I don't even got to be in the car. I can just pull it up and say, hey, let's get working. Working on what? What's the end of it? Oh, I'm trying to close this deal. Okay, the deal is closed. Now what? Okay, the deal's closed. Now that the deal is closed, I'm going to start working on another deal. And you see, it's tricky because there's these little lies, there's these little carrots at the end of these sticks that are out in front of us that we tell ourselves we're getting to. I want to be more experiential. Like I want to have the type of lifestyle where I can take my family to do this and to do that. You can already take your family to do this and do that. There's a level of comfort that you would like to approach at the exact same time. But really you want more. I've been in sales for my entire life, it seems. And the one thing that keeps coming back to me, this pain, this thorn that I have, is that in true sales, in big boy sales, whenever you start getting up there, there's this theme. And the theme never goes away, despite what company you work for and what position you play within it. And the theme is more. I don't care if you just had the best quarter you've ever had. Someone will congratulate you and say, oh, I knew you could do it. Tell us how you did it. See, this guy, he didn't just stop because it was 5 o'clock. He went over to those people's place because it was 6 p.m. and he went harder and he called this many more people and he did this many more things. And that's amazing. Great job. I know you're just going to crush it this quarter too. You're just like, wow, man, the ink ain't even dry on this check. And you want more. It's a hamster wheel. But what are you building? I used to work in construction with some people from my church, and this, don't laugh. I know everybody that knows me knows that I'm not handy, but I did used to work in construction, and we used to build these buildings. And while it wasn't my favorite work because I was a true liability, like I had to like learn things slowly. Well, I learned pretty quick, but like as far as my hands doing the work and being good at them, just wasn't my natural affinity. But what I did love is at the end of the day, I loved being able to stand back and see something built. You get to see an actual progress report of, hey, I'm building this thing. And for me, that's very metaphorical. What are you handing to your family, to your children? When they see you, when they see your life, and when you're in your 3,000 square foot house, and when you go pick up the new Audi and all the little things that are transpiring, when they see these things, what are you handing them intangibly? There's this time where Elijah is getting ready to be taken up into the whirlwind. And Elisha, or Elisha, however you say that, however people want to say that, but his protege, the person he's mentoring, essentially is with him, knowing that he's going to be taken away that day. And he has this conversation with Elijah. And he tells Elijah, when you leave, I want a double portion of your spirit. And Elijah says, you're asking for a really hard thing, but I tell you what, if you're able to see me when I leave, then you'll get this double portion of my spirit. And so for that entire last little bit of time that Elijah's on earth, he's like, I'm going over to this place. And he keeps trying to kind of ditch Elisha. But Elisha's like, wherever you go, I'm there. And he doesn't leave his side because he's like, whenever you leave, I'm going to see you. I'm going to watch it happen. And they get ready to go over this water. And Elijah takes his staff and he smites this water, and the water stands up on either side, and it goes through with this. And it's on dry land again. And then it's just on the other side of this where the taking up into the whirlwind begins to happen. Elijah gets taken up into this whirlwind, and this chariot of fire rushes between Elisha and Elijah. And instead of looking at the chariot of fire, we always sing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, but the scripture says he got taken up into a whirlwind, not by a chariot. The chariot splits them, and he goes up into a whirlwind. Instead of watching the chariot of fire, his eye is focused on the whirlwind, and he sees him go up. He completes the mission. Obviously, he sees the mantle that falls down, and he takes up his mantle, which I'm sure that's where we get that phrase from. He takes up his mantle, and the first thing that he does is he goes over to the water, and he says this phrase. He says, where is the God of Elijah? And he smites the water, and the water stands up on either side. You see, there's several different really important things that are happening here. All he's really doing is repeating what he's seen. He watched Elijah's life and how he dedicated it towards God. And then when he gets back to the water, he says, I've seen this. I know what happens here. And he replicates. Can you hand that to the people that you're around? That's something worth building. That's intangible. But if you'll notice, there was no less focus or diligence. Just like we claim to have, just like all the properties that we want to like focus ourselves on in praise and worship, which is this focus, this drive, this worker spirit, this warrior spirit. There was no less diligence. Elisha was with that man every step of the way. And he was incredibly focused because he knew what he wanted and where he wanted to go. That's something worth building. I mean, we got timed social media posts. We got all these things transpiring to make sure that we next level. You got guys that are millionaires that are telling you how to become billionaires. You got billionaires that get on there and say, hey, if you wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day and do this, this is the thing that transpires. And this is the culture we've built. We built that. And all the while the devil is saying, yeah, a little more. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you can't even hear the sound of the voice of God. That's where I want you. We're a slave to our phones and our calendars, but nobody wants to talk about that part because that's corporate. Everybody's got that. I have 2 computers and I have a laptop, and it feels noble. It does. It feels noble. I think we're designed to feel that after a good hard day's work. You're like, yeah, that feels good. But it's not about that. It's what did you work on? Where are you going? Like I have this buddy, and I'm not going to say his name. It almost just slipped out. But I have this buddy, and it was a long time ago. He probably doesn't even do this anymore. But he used to play this game, and I used to kind of make fun of him because I didn't understand the game. And it turns out it was like a really huge game. But he used to play this game called World of Warcraft. And I would come in and I would watch him, and he would just be like building this character and taking this character on little journeys and doing things in this game all the time. And I said, dude, how long do you play this game? Because he had a job like me, he had a house like me, all these different things. I was like, how do you have time to always? When do you sleep? And he's like, oh, I don't. And we just kind of chuckled. But then he said, you can actually see how long I've played the game in the bottom corner of the computer screen. So we looked, and in that year, within the same year, we weren't at the end of the year. We weren't very far into it. I want to say we were probably in the summer somewhere. Within that year, it showed that he had played that game for 31 days. The collective time was 31 days. And I just looked at him and I said, you've been on this thing for 31 days of this year? And you could tell that it kind of hit him because he had no idea. He hadn't looked down at that. He had not paid attention to the fact that that's how much time he had logged in this game. Well, in the game, the more time you log, the more adventures. Don't get me to lie, and I don't know how many adventures you get to go on. But the more things you do in this game, you kind of just keep leveling up, and you keep leveling up, and your character becomes more powerful, and things become more accessible. All the things, but it's just a character, and it's so ironic to me because isn't that just life? Instead of leveling up outside of the computer screen and just consistently working on building something that doesn't fade, he was just building it in there because inside of that reality, he enjoyed it. More controllable. The world was his oyster. Everything was at his fingertips. Sound familiar? The scripture tells us to lay not up treasures on earth where moth and rust doth corrupt and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's the hack. When I say where are you going and you don't know, when I say where are you going and there's no end, it's because your heart is very much here on earth. Your heart is very much here in a place that is full of temporary, just these temporary things. That's really what a lot of us are doing. A lot of us are just building a character in an alternate reality. And we give it these titles. We're chasing passions. We're chasing dreams. We're out here chasing dreams. By virtue of what I do, and I don't name drop because it doesn't mean anything because none of these people are Jesus, but I have been blessed to be able to have conversations with people on all different sides of the spectrum. People that are very famous, and people that nobody knows, people that are multimillionaires, people that are billionaires, and people that are homeless. And I can tell you one thing is true about all of them. Nothing that they could accumulate in this life will ever be to the spot where they feel like that they're willing to say this will bring you joy. Now, don't mistake me. Not having things, not having money, not having the ability to pay brings a whole different level of stressors into your life. We're not talking about being lazy. We're not talking about not having ambition or drive to complete things, but you need a desired end. I am doing this thing. I am going to law school to become a lawyer. Once I've become a lawyer, this is the job function, this is the career that I want to be in. I get that. Sometimes you just got to work. You got to go do your thing. But now that I'm a lawyer, what's my desired end? What's my actual goal? My tangible goal, for an example of what that might sound like, my tangible goal is right now I'm a father and I've got a son. That's what my life consists of right now. I'm a father and I've got a son. I'm also a son to someone else. I'm a brother to someone else. I'm a preacher to a congregation of people. There's a lot of things that I could fall into, but as far as my goal and what I'm looking at, I want to make sure that as my son goes through life, he knows where his God is. That when life inevitably hits him like it has hit each and every one of us, that he can grab that mantle and say, where's the God of my dad? That's my goal. And that shapes the things that I do and how I do them. And that keeps me from jumping on the hamster wheel over here in this direction because that's the shiny thing, or over here in this direction because that's my passion. Like, all those things come into play at some point, but they're all very metered. I know when they stop. This stops here. And the interesting thing about that is that because of the culture that we've created, no one's going to agree with you. You're going to take this theory to somewhere and you say, okay, this is where I stop. And somebody's going to say, you just don't want it enough. And they're right. If you have this stopping point, they're essentially saying you don't want that thing enough. But that is not a bad thing. We have made that a very negative thing. Oh man, if you're not willing to do this, that, and the other, you just don't want it bad enough. You're accurate. The only thing that I want bad enough is to be able to save me and anyone who would hear me. That's it. All the other stuff, they kind of fall into play. But the reason these things feel so bad when you challenge them internally is because of self-preservation. Not yourself, the entity that you worship. You see, no matter how close it is to looking like God, if it's not God, it's an idol. And our addictions and our affinities can become that really quickly. And once they develop this little life of their own, once our idea comes out of our head and it becomes a passion and we chase it to the point where we are never ending, then it becomes a deity. And that deity wants to live. So when you start asking, interrogating, or challenging questions, that deity wants to shut that down. And it will provide you with a plethora of different justifications for why you're doing what you're doing. But when do you slow down? You're running so hard. What do you have to show for that? Is God impressed? We could talk about this forever. But as always, I'm so glad that you tuned in. But if anything that I said offended you, just remember that you tuned in. Hopefully we'll be talking to you next time.